Some of my videos can have an uneasy or inappropriate mix of using humour, unfunny as it might be, with the serious. So do bear that in mind when watching any of my video output. Mainstream media have done a fantastic job of scaring the population into believing a particular virus and now its variants is on a par with the Black Death. I find it difficult to believe over 70% of Britain's people have made an informed choice to get jabbed with a C19 inoculation. Perhaps it was our beloved mainstream media that was the significant factor forming their decision to accepting the jab or jabs. Maybe I've developed latent masochistic tendencies because I will watch MSM news and I'll get enraged at the bias. Though some of the newscasters do help me through the pain of watching. I was watching 5 News yesterday where an unvaxxed female was being interviewed in hospital.
Well, today came a plea from the England's Chief Medical Officer for people not to delay getting jabbed. Professor Chris Whitty said he'd spent the last few weeks working on a COVID ward, treating some very sick young people, most were unvaccinated. It's a situation that's reflected right across the country. And 5's Peter Lane has been meeting one young woman at Preston Hospital who now regrets her decision not to get the jab.
On the mend and ready to leave after more than 10 days in the COVID ward. Megan's voice is still weak, but she wants you to hear her story of regret at not being vaccinated and fear as she fell seriously ill.
I just remember thinking, I'm going to get through this. Like, I can't breathe. I have nothing other wrong with me. Like, I'm a young, healthy-ish girl. So why am I now struggling to breathe? Am I going to die? Am I going to be one of the people that die through COVID? Just for the fact that I've somehow not took the vaccine, and that's why I'm really poorly. It wasn't that I'm being an anti-vax or anything. I just thought, well, I'm a young girl, I have no health issues. That shouldn't necessarily disrupt my way of life. If I get COVID, it'll be a cold, it'll be a cough. I will be okay.
Ultimately, what stopped you getting the vaccine?
My own stupidness.
You would call it stupidness?
Yeah.
Other people would say, well, it's your choice.
It was my choice, but my choice was stupid not to take it.
The COVID beds are still busy here at Royal Preston Hospital. Just like Megan, almost 70% of seriously ill patients admitted to this ward have not had a single dose of the vaccine. Staff would never judge a patient for their decision, but are frustrated.
The fact that people are coming seriously ill, young people where we could have prevented this happening, means the beds are taken up. And ambulances are busy, A&E is busy, our wards are busy. Here is a scenario where we're dealing with a preventable problem, a preventable condition. And that's why we do feel a bit frustrated at times.
Megan's friends, also in their 20s, are now getting vaccinated. And through her COVID-weakened voice, her personal message is clear.
Look at what I've been through. Like, I get you don't want to get it, but look at what I've been through. This could be you, or this could be your friends. It's been very, very scary, and I'm glad it's finally come to an end for myself. And I just hope now that people also can see that it's real and it is still out there and it's still very large. Please just be safe.
Megan Roberts speaking to Peter Lane. Still to come on 5 News.
Before allowing this 20-something hospitalised female to terrify other 20-somethings or teens to get jabbed, the reporter Peter Lane should have dispensed with any niceties and been brutally honest, and mentioned that being clinically obese, she is in the vulnerable category that these vaccines were made for, not otherwise healthy people. But this is mainstream media who are constantly bombarding us with fear stats. And just where do these directives come from for the daily fearmongering we've endured since March 2020? If mainstream media had added some useful balance by stating amongst those stats that the average age of those who died with or allegedly with COVID is 82 or 83 years of age. Now that would have helped immensely. Showing the results of a Danish study on mask wearing would also help the uninformed arrive at a more informed decision, as would showing ordinary healthy people develop debilitating conditions due to taking the jab. I don't recall seeing BBC News, ITV News, Channel 4 or 5 news programmes publish the number of people being adversely affected after taking the jab, or of any fatalities from the Pfizer, AstraZeneca or any other shot. The following video features a short selection from our Antipodean cousins, and I'm sure every country where vaccines have been given would, I presume, be able to demonstrate much the same.
Michelle had her whole life ahead of her. Travels, study and a typical teenage social life.
I had uni, I was working, I was going out with friends during the day, spending time with my family. Just normal things.
But now Michelle Georges is confined to a wheelchair, unable to walk after receiving her first dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine on April the 2nd. A decision which changed her whole life.
So I was fine on the day. I just had like a sore arm and a bit of a headache, but that was about it. The next day, April 3rd, in the morning when I woke up, I fainted, and so that's when everything started. Shaking, I couldn't balance, and I just couldn't coordinate my movements properly.
The once healthy teen knew there was a link to the vaccine, but doctors were quick to deny that.
But with this experience, we've noticed that as soon as we mention vaccine, it's like a completely changed demeanor. Like they're all so hostile, they're so angry, they just want to, make you quiet. They're just like, no, it's not related. They were very adamant that it was unrelated to the vaccine and that it was some sort of mental health issue instead. So they got me to speak to psychiatrists and all that. They suggested all sorts of things like stress from my degree, or like lack of affection from my family, or worries about growing up, all sorts of crazy things that they told me that could be the cause of my problems.
After being discharged from 2 hospitals still in terrible condition, Michelle was finally transferred to an inpatient rehab where she spent the next 2 months undergoing intense therapy. Step by step, day by day, Michelle is returning to a somewhat normal, but doctors say it could take years.
If you knew what you know now, would you have taken it?
No, definitely not. I went into taking that vaccine not knowing anything was going to happen. I didn't expect for anything to happen, but it did happen. And at the same time, I have lots of friends who have taken the vaccine, both doses, and they're completely fine. So reactions are super unexpected. They're very individual to you, and I don't think there's anything you can do to actively prevent something from happening.
She's not alone. Thousands of people around the world have had their immune system attack nerve cells after the vaccine, causing inflammation, numbness, muscle weakness and difficulty in walking. Although it's a long recovery, Michelle is lucky to be alive. But for the Garron family, memories are now all they have. They're still coming to terms with the death of a caring husband and a loving father. Robert Garron was just 52 when he died of a massive heart attack, just 1 week after receiving the Pfizer vaccine. With no prior health conditions, the family are baffled, now wanting answers.
Yeah, the Monday before he got vaccinated, he was, like, my daughter videoed him just twerking and dancing around the kitchen, full of life, totally, like, nothing wrong with him whatsoever.
Money fight, these niggas on my business. JC, I ain't playing. Little bitch, I don't want your man.
It was Tuesday the 20th of July when he received the jab. 48 hours later, his health started deteriorating. First, the heavy coughing, then completely bedridden.
He didn't have any energy. He couldn't walk very far. He'd have to sit down because he was just really kind of lethargic. He was sleeping a lot. He was mostly complaining that he was having trouble getting breath in and having trouble breathing. And he went from being completely healthy one day to, by the end of the week and the following week, very sick and couldn't breathe and gone.
It's kind of missing, but he was here, but he just wasn't here.
Yeah.
Because he was just always sleeping, always lying down.
Exactly 8 days after the jab, this family's worst nightmare played out.
As I was talking to the operator, he was sitting on the stool and he started collapsing off the stool and he said, I'm going down, and then he collapsed on the floor.
Once paramedics arrived, it was too late.
They said he's just got flat line, and they said there's nothing else that we can do for him. We can't take him to the hospital, he's already gone. I just said to the paramedics, I said, are you sure? I think you need to go back in there and keep trying. Can you just go and... I just kept saying, can you just go and keep trying?
Was that quite odd for you both, since your dad's he was
Well,
quite healthy?
I didn't think much of it at first. I thought it was just another, he was just sick and he was just resting. I didn't know how, serious it was. Yeah, we didn't know how, it was actually real and happening. We thought he was just gonna come back, but he didn't.
The vaccination was not considered a possible link. Instead, the autopsy showing sudden onset myocarditis. This didn't sit well with the family, questioning whether there's more than meets the eye. Studies have shown people who have received the mRNA COVID vaccines can develop myocarditis just days after taking the jab, often younger men and shortly after the second dose of the vaccine.
There's adverse reactions, everybody's having different things, and it's not well publicised. You have to literally go and find it yourself.
So far, almost 6.3 million Australians are now fully vaccinated. By December, the federal government aimed to have 80% of the population receive the jab under Operation COVID Shield. But a massive vaccination push could see more and more people suffering adverse reactions, which up until now has been kept quiet. Luckily, families are speaking out. Shana's 69-year-old mother, Michelle, changed completely after her first dose of the vaccine.
And from that point on, Mum's cognitive ability and physiological ability, symptoms just decreased rapidly. So she was no longer able to email. She was struggling to talk when I called her. I was trying to call her every day, but she was struggling to be able to get sentences out. She could no longer walk around, go to the toilet, so she was having to wear nappies all of a sudden. Yeah, so it was quite a full-on decline.
She believes she should have never been given the vaccine, knowing her prior health conditions.
The risk of tiny little blood clots is something that people are talking about as being a possible adverse reaction. So someone like my mother, who has blood clotting in our family, we've actually got a genetic blood clotting disorder in our family called factor V Leiden. So she should never have had the vaccine.
Thousands of kilometres away, Shana felt helpless.
But I actually just didn't believe that they would give her the second dose to a woman that was so unwell. And I said, how did that happen? And she said, oh, they came to the door. I said no. They came in to give it to me. I said no, that they stood at the door for a while, and apparently they discussed it amongst themselves, and then they just came in and administered the vaccine anyway.
Sadly, 5 weeks later, she passed away. So far this year, the Therapeutic Goods Administration have reported more than 350 deaths following the COVID vaccine and close to 41,000 adverse reactions related to the vaccine. Despite all these numbers, not one has been reported on mainstream media. Instead, the media and the government continue to push their agenda, ensuring as many Australians get vaccinated as possible. Our Prime Minister Scott Morrison even suggesting greater freedoms for those who have been vaccinated and different arrangements for those who haven't. Around the world, millions are speaking up against the vaccines, vaccine passports and lockdowns, which have essentially caused a global economic meltdown. But they are being dismissed as anti-vaxxers and conspiracy theorists. For the families that have lost someone or have had lifelong disabilities after the vaccine, their voices are slowly being heard. A once active woman, also desperate to share her story, but would rather remain anonymous. She ended up in a coma for 3 weeks shortly after her AstraZeneca vaccine dose. This left her with severe brain swelling, having to learn how to walk, talk and write all over again.
I mean, why are you sharing your story? What's the main reason why you're sharing your story?
For people to be aware of what can happen to them, the adverse reaction. It's not all roses like they make it out, okay? There is thorns also, and we've heard of that, and there is more that, and there is more complications than you ever think. Like,
people have turned to Facebook to share their stories and experiences, with one group reaching almost 65,000 members. It was removed overnight for no apparent reason. Facebook is reportedly trying to silence COVID-19 vaccine skeptics, censoring all content related.
I want people to be aware that even a healthy person can have what looks like a massive reaction to vaccinations, and I don't think that anybody's really educating people on how severe reactions can be and how random reactions can be. You don't even have to have an underlying health condition to worry.
But I think it is a shame that the government and everyone has taken such a big, responsibility to completely dismiss it. I feel like they should take action, and I feel like the government should acknowledge it instead of just going out and saying it's a completely safe vaccine, it's completely safe, everyone take it.
when there is the television on and there is Scott Morrison or Gladysberry Chickley, I just tune off. Because I know what COVID, like the vaccine, has done to me. So there is a lot out there that's not being said.
It has contributed to a significant increase in adverse event reports. We currently have about 11,000 adverse event reports for the two COVID vaccines in front of the TGA. Our job is to look for the needle in that haystack.
Ultimately, it's a decision of government, and we sort of really can't comment further than that.
Okay, if they say compensation is available through the courts and they're given indemnity insurance to vaccine suppliers...
Correct.
People can only get paid compensation if they go through the courts, so obviously the government would know this, and if it doesn't, it needs to get a handle on the situation. Most people cannot afford to go through the courts. They're delusional, that's the first thing, and by the way, they're chocked. So, and even if they win, which would be an uphill, that would be an uphill battle for them. Do you think that the lack of compensation system has to do with why people are so hesitant to go out and get a jab? Because trust me, Mr Murphy, as a senator, I'm saying you're not compensated. I'm making that very clear to people out there. I'm not going to sit there and lie to them. So if something goes wrong, I'm telling them how hard it is, because that is my job as a senator. So how do you think the government's going to go by us telling the truth out there to the people that, you know what, if something goes wrong, you're stuffed? Because your government isn't going to look after you and you're not getting compensation.
I would hope you wouldn't say to the public that if something goes wrong, you're stuffed, Senator. That would not be good
Well,
for...
that's the truth, Mr Murphy. It takes years to get through a court system. If you do get sick from this stuff, you will get sick. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that's not happening, or that won't happen, because I'm not telling the truth, Mr Murphy.
Okay, Senator Lambie, if we let Professor Murphy respond.
So, look, I don't think I can add anything more to it, Senator. That's been a decision of government.
Which is obviously why they're in the 1B, quite significant issues. So does that apply to anybody in 1B?
There's no evidence that any underlying medical conditions predispose to this reaction, with rare reaction. It appears out of the blue whether you have an underlying medical condition or not.
More and more people are waking up to the fact that this government is corrupt as fuck. When not flouting rules imposed on us, they lie, evade, cover up, fill their pockets and continue to encroach on our freedoms in the name of safety. The mantra, do as we say, not as we do, could have been made for them. These self-serving toffs need turfing out. But as there is no opposition, who will replace the bastard Boris and his horrible hooray henchmen and women? Before you jump to the wrong conclusion, I hate all toffs. I don't. I'd class the actor and now reclaimed party leader Lawrence Fox a toff. But his attendance at anti-lockdown protests, his interviews with various people on television and online mark him out for me as a very good replacement as an interim leader. You may disagree. I'd kick the SAGE advisory group out and have signatories to the Great Barrington Declaration offer their less invasive methods to deal with all things COVID. The police and army will have to stop doffing their caps to this self-serving government. They really need to serve the people and not Boris and co. So at which point do they side with the people and not these little dictators? In my very simple world, for I'm a simple person, Lawrence Fox will be ushered through the gates by the police guarding Downing Street and then through the door of number 10, where he will be peacefully installed as the new PM and can begin the important task of dismantling all the COVID rules forced upon the population and of course consign COVID passports to history.